would agree that at times, living in Florida can be a bit strange. I recently discovered that there's actually a business that will bring an alligator to your child's birthday party for $175. Now, there are some rules. You have to have a pool, and they tape the alligator's mouth shut for safety. So now when my friends up north ask me, what's it like to live in the Sunshine State? I can say, we are the home of the most bugs, the stickiest weather, do not be fooled today, the oddest of voting practices, and your child can swim with an alligator. If anyone's wondering, the Chamber of Commerce never caused me to do a speech. But if you're like me and you're worried about the bugs or the alligators, or whether or not your vote will ever count as a Floridian, I'm here to tell you these are the least of your problems, especially if you have a daughter. The really dangerous alligator in our midst is the fact that every day a staggering number of girls and young women in Florida are being arrested and imprisoned for nonviolent, non-serious offenses. Girls account for 30% of all of the arrests in the United States and here in Florida. Right here on the First Coast, we lock up more girls than Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Tampa combined. This little 6-year-old girl, right here in Florida, was arrested, handcuffed, and booked for throwing a temper tantrum in school. And it's not just a Florida problem. When we look at countries that land themselves on human rights watch list for their inhumane prison systems, we find China, Russia, Brazil, Thailand. Guess which country incarcerates more women and girls than any of these? Our very own United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. We should all be asking ourselves, what is going on here? Well, what we have learned is that a girl's path to the justice system is fairly predictable. The typical path for a girl begins at home. The girl's story is one of sexual violence, exploitation, trauma, abuse, and neglect. Research underscores that 70 to 90% of girls in the justice system share this path. So what's a young girl to do when her mom's boyfriend or her dad won't stop coming into her bedroom at night and sexually molesting her? She seeks safety. How does a 12 or 13-year-old girl seek safety? She runs away from home, and in doing so, she commits her first crime. Because running away from home when you're under 18 is against the law. The very thing that we encourage adult women to do when they're in an abusive relationship puts a girl on a fast track to lock up. Let me introduce you to 2 girls that are really important in my life, Bianella and Olivia. Bianella in the little white dress is my friend. Olivia in the dance costume is my grandniece. Both Bianella and Olivia shared very similar childhoods, their days filled with play and laughter, bedtime stories and birthday parties. Olivia's life is continuing pretty much along that track. Bianella's life was also very typical when she was living at home in the Dominican Republic with her loving grandmother. But for Bianella, something went terribly wrong. When I first met Bianella, she was in jail, facing 30 years in prison. My heart still almost stops when I think about that fate for Olivia. So what happened to Bianella in that space between bedtime stories and prison? Here are the facts. At age 7, Bianella was brought to the United States and forced to live with a mother that she barely knew, who abused and neglected her. At age 11, she was raped by a 20-year-old acquaintance of the family. At age 12, she gave birth to her son Christian. Bianella was only in the 5th grade. She was too young to go to the school for pregnant girls, so she dropped out in the 5th grade. By age 14, both Bianella and then 2-year-old Christian was placed in foster care because of the abuse that they were suffering. Bianella's greatest fear is that she would be separated from her son. While in foster care, she discovered that Christian was being sexually molested by the older boys in the home. But she was warned by the very individuals who were entrusted to care for her that if she spoke up, it was highly unlikely that she and Christian would be put in another home together because there were far too few foster parents that would take a teen mother and her son. So at 14, Bianella gets a job in a fast food restaurant with the dream of someday having a home of her own for her and Christian. At age 18, after having worked since she was 14 years old, Bianella ages out of foster care, and she and her son Christian move into a small efficiency apartment, finally a home of their own. Bianella soon meets and marries the only man who ever told her she was pretty or brought her flowers. She has 3 more children, and she works 2 full-time jobs to support her family. The husband who told her she was pretty and brought her flowers, twice her size, begins to choke and abuse her. She later finds out that he's also abusing Christian, and when the police are en route to arrest Christian's stepfather for the abuse, he takes a gun and violently kills himself in front of Bianella's 2 youngest children. Stunned, grieving, with absolutely nowhere to turn, Bianella moves from Miami to Jacksonville with the dream of starting a new life for her family. So if you've heard the media sound bites, you already know in excruciating detail about the morning Bianella's toddler son David was knocked unconscious by his older brother Christian. You also know that Bianella was dubbed the worst mother in the world for failing to take David to the hospital in a timely manner. Bianella's greatest fear was if she asked for help, her children would be taken away from her. So she scours the internet looking for information on what to do. And in doing this, she delays taking David to the hospital for medical treatment. She feared that her children would be thrown into the very foster care system where she knew firsthand about the abuse that happened there. It's too late. David dies from the injuries sustained at the hands of his brother. Bianella is also arrested. So 12-year-old Christian is arrested and charged as an adult with murder in the 1st degree. And Bianella also arrested and charged with aggravated manslaughter. So now you know the facts. What we wouldn't know and what we must know is why this tragedy happened, because it did not have to happen. Volumes have been written about the system failures that not only failed to protect Bianella as a child, but actually provided the context for her abuse. I'm not going to go into detail about that here. I also don't have all the answers, but what I do know that is this. Each one of us has been given a superpower that has the potential to end the cascade of violence and injustice. That superpower is your voice. Each system failure began with an individual, their personal decision to not get involved. David's story, Christian's story, Bianella's story would look very different if anywhere along that timeline any individual had been willing to have been inconvenienced and had bothered to speak up and speak out about what they saw. When an 11-year-old shows up at school in the 5th grade pregnant, someone must be willing to speak up and speak out. When a 12-year-old gives birth in a hospital, surrounded by highly trained medical professionals, surely someone will speak up and speak out. When an 18-year-old ages out of foster care with her 6-year-old son and absolutely no support systems, surely someone in the Department of Children and Families whose mission is to protect our children, surely someone will speak up and speak out. To not involve ourselves, to believe it is not our problem, to believe it is not our business is convenient. Convenient thinking can be deadly. Convenient thinking is certainly costly to the tune of $88,000. That's the average cost nationally to incarcerate a young person. And the return on that investment is a 55% recidivism rate. Evidence-based alternatives to incarceration cost as little as $11 a day and decreases recidivism by as much as 22%. And while a girl is in prison, study after study shows that she will be subjected to sexual assault, physical abuse, isolation, restraint, forced disrobing, and body searches by male staff. The path of victimization that put her in the system gets reenacted when she's in that system. The difference is her re-victimization and her re-traumatization is being paid for by our tax dollars. And when she's released from prison, her arrest record will follow her the rest of her life. It can block her from getting a college scholarship, from living in a dorm, from going in the military, from getting a job as a teacher, a nurse, a child care worker. So imagine today, if you have a child in school and that child gets in a fight in the hallway, zero tolerance laws make it highly probable, instead of that altercation being handled by the principal as it was when I was in school, that more than likely the police will be called and that child will be charged with assault and battery. An arrest record that will follow them well into adulthood. The reality is, sealed records of a child is a myth. For these girls, America is not the land of the free, even after they've done their time. The consequences of not speaking up, of not speaking out, when we see that something is wrong, means girls like Bianella become a casualty of convenient thinking. I realize the task ahead seems overwhelming. We can't help everyone. I get that. Our lives are busy, we're fatigued, we're overextended. But I told you, your voice is a superpower. And I witnessed firsthand when a community, our community, came together and raised its collective voice. What did speaking up and speaking out accomplished for Bianella? Individual citizens, moms, dads, students, even a group of lawyers reached consensus, which sort of surprised us. One courageous judge, social services professionals, and the advocates all came together and raised their collective voice to bring hope and opportunity out of the cascade of violence and injustice. Each individual was willing to take a personal risk, to be criticized, to be disliked, to be inconvenienced, and to be bothered. But Bianella's story has a very different ending because of their collective voices. Although by court order, Bianella will never be able to see her two youngest sons, or two youngest children, actually. She has a son and a daughter. She has been given the opportunity to be valued, to be safe, to go to college. She just took her placement test yesterday. She begins in January. She will also begin full-time employment in November, which we are very excited about. She has been given the opportunity to be a contributing citizen. Bianella has certainly contributed to my life. Once when I visited her in jail, I wore this purple dress. And I was sitting in this small cinder block room where she was allowed to come visit me by the guards there. And when she walked into this dismal place with this beautiful smile, Bianella thanked me for wearing purple. And I was a little perplexed, and I asked her, Bianella, is purple your favorite color? And she said, I haven't seen purple in almost 2 years. A stark reminder. As I looked around at the gray walls, the gray metal table that separated us, the gray jail scrubs that she was wearing, a stark reminder of all that she had lost, and also all that I take for granted. But of all of the lessons Bianella has taught me, the greatest lesson of all is that there's absolutely no excuse for a lack of courage and commitment, no matter how difficult the task that's put before us. When you use your superpower, when you raise your voice, you can change the story of the girls in our community. So when that moment comes, that warning, that feeling, the knowing that something's not right, when you see the alligator in the pool, consider it an invitation to use the power of your voice. A few words may be all that it takes. Are you okay? Can I help? What do you need? I am here. 3, maybe 4 words, the simplest superpower ever. I'm not asking you to leap over tall buildings in one single bound. I'm not even asking you to wear a cape. But after spending some time here today, I've decided that capes can be optional. And if you choose to wear a cape, I'm going to ask you to choose the color purple. Let us not be the nation that imprisons more women and girls than any other nation. Let us not be a community content with throwing our girls away. Let us use the power of our voice. Let us be the home of the brave so our girls will know what it means to live in the land of the free. Thank you.